Welcome to Act 3 of this week's Extra Time Triple Play. 3 games as intriguing as a John le Carré novel, and we will start in the nation's capital, Shep. DC United hosting the New England Revolution on Friday night on ESPN2. And by the way, speaking of DC United, when is President Obama going to get out to a United game?
Greg, he's definitely going to go to a game.
He better.
I'll tell you why. His press secretary is Robert Gibbs. Was a goalkeeper at North Carolina State. The goalkeeper's rule. So I'm sure he's going to get Obama out to a game. Maybe their game against the Chicago Fire.
Well, could you imagine him sitting with the Screaming Eagles in Barra Brava bouncing around?
Oh, Robert Gibbs, he was actually a teammate at North Carolina State with Roy Lassiter and Henry Gutierrez. So
old MLS players. Well, DC United lost over the weekend, but on the positive note, Luciano Emilio has now scored in 3 straight games. Then there's the negative again. Christian Gomez, they brought him back this year, the vaunted hero, and he just hasn't really looked like his self, his creative self that we expected.
And the yin and the yang, the good stuff, yeah. Emilio stepping up. But I'm a little bit concerned about Christian Gomez because he's been in DC United before. He was a world-class player. At a certain age, his position, the legs give away, and who knows, he doesn't look sharp, doesn't look crisp. He needs to try and turn it around.
Well, New England certainly seems to be looking sharp and crisp. They're undefeated. They're coming off a bye week, and they had a good win a couple of weeks ago over Dallas when they were down a goal. They came back in the second half, got 2 goals. In that game, most interesting to me was losing at halftime, they inserted Steve Ralston, who made a season debut after an injury kept him out of the first 2 games. And they converted from a back 4 to a back 3. This really allowed Ralston to feel comfortable, I think, in the midfield where there were 5.
Greg, I think you're right. I'm not a big believer there's a huge difference, but for New England, I think the difference is Steve Ralston. Steve Ralston's presence in the midfield really gives everybody confidence.
Especially without Taylor Twellman up top.
You got it, because he's a go-to guy. Knows how to get the ball, knows how to look up, make a quick pass. So I think he opens things up probably better, you're right, with 3 in the back and 5 in the midfield, but having him on the field, any system really helps.
It'll be interesting to see what New England does, what New England coach Steve Nicol decides against DC on the road, whether they go with 4 in the back or 3 in the back. The next game we're going to look at, Colorado at Houston. The Dynamo are struggling right now, which actually seems to be what we say every week. And at the beginning of every season, we talk about Houston struggling. Most concerning, only 3 goals in their first 4 games.
I don't think there's any question. I'm not a big believer that Kai Kamara really complements Brian Ching up top. I think he instead of using his speed to get out wide, I think he's cramming things, trying to win balls in the air, and really cramping Brian Ching. You and I talked about it. Maybe there's some alternatives as a second small striker for
anybody you could see in there. I could maybe see even Brad Davis stepping up as a second striker and acting like Dwayne De Rosario when Dayro is in Houston.
Yeah, they're lacking the service. So Brad Davis, you know, any chance to push him higher up on the field where he could get more shots at goal with left foot, I'd be in favor of that.
We should also remember they're missing Nate Jakwa, who was picked up by Seattle, which is also something that's important. Now, the Dynamo, you could feel that they could explode at any moment, obviously, because they are 2-time MLS champs just a couple of years ago, which is why I think actually this is a big test for the Colorado Rapids. I think a win would put them squarely into the conversation about being a contender for the West.
Well, I agree with you, but they still have to go do it. Colorado,
they still have to prove it.
Yeah, Colorado has been really organized, really systematic in the way they approach the game home and away. Connor Casey has been a revelation so far this year. So it's going to be a tough challenge for Houston. And
defensively, they seem to be doing very well as well in Colorado with Preston Burpo. Matt Pickens nowhere on the scene right now, out injured right now. Burpo getting the job done. The last game of this 3-pack, Seattle at Chivas. A top-of-the-table clash in the West. Last weekend was a day of firsts for the Sounders, actually. They saw their first ever red card, Casey Keller. They conceded their first goal, unlucky. They were shut out for the first time, Freddie Montero not getting on the score sheet. And most important, they lost for the first time. How does Seattle rebound from this?
I'm still on their bandwagon. I really love the Seattle Sounders team, but I am not on their bandwagon without Casey Keller. I think they're going to struggle.
What are their options in goal now without Keller?
Well, you know, they used a backup, a league pool emergency goalkeeper.
Ben Dragovan brought in,
And he did a good job. He really, I thought he should have made the save on the Davy Arnott shot. He got a hand to it, but he did a good job in that game. Can you do it again in a big game? I don't know. New York Red Bulls, they brought in Dufty, when Sapero got hurt against Houston. Dufty, I think, is getting put on waivers, may end up in Seattle, but without Casey Keller in goal for Seattle, I'm not thinking they're going to do well.
Well, it'll be difficult for sure, especially because they're going up against Chivas. They had their own struggles, but they didn't lose the game against LA, did they? So, I mean, they had lots of chances. They have half of their attack, it seems, sitting in the training room. This is a team that, we've talked about before and the system that they're playing, and Preki just has them working really well.
I'm impressed more each time I see Chivas play. They're running off the ball. Their passing is crisp, sharp. Guys who used not to be good passers of the ball, they buy into the system and they get rid of it one touch. They're going to miss Nagamura, though, in the
That's
game.
true. And against Seattle, what would you predict in this game?
I think Chivas is going to squeak out a narrow victory.
Well, Shep, I agree. The game is Saturday night at the Home Depot Center. Chivas probably going to extend their lead in the Western Conference. That's all we have for you this week on ET, but be sure to email us any questions, comments, or suggestions at extratime@mlsnet.com. But join us next week and we'll kick it around.